Lord Russell, what is philosophy?
Well, that's a very controversial question. I think no two philosophers will give you the same answer. My own view would be that philosophy consists of speculations about matters where exact knowledge is not yet possible. But that will only be my answer, not anybody else's.
What's the difference between philosophy and science?
Well, roughly you'd say science is what we know and philosophy is what we don't know. That's a simple definition. And for that reason, Christians are perpetually passing over from philosophy into science as knowledge advances.
When something is established and discovered, it ceases to be philosophy and becomes science.
Yes. And all sorts of questions that used to be labeled philosophy are no longer so labeled.
What good is philosophy?
I think philosophy has two uses, really. One of them is to keep alive speculation about things that are not yet amenable to scientific knowledge. After all, scientific knowledge covers a very small part of the things that interest mankind and ought to interest them. There are a great many things of immense interest about which science, at present at any rate, has nothing to say. And I don't want people's imaginations to be limited and enclosed within what can be now known. And I think to enlarge your imaginative purview of the world into the hypothetical realm is one of the uses of philosophy. But there's another use which I think is equally important, which is to show that there are things we thought we knew and don't know. On the one hand, to keep us thinking about things that we may come to know, and on the other hand, to keep us modestly aware of how much that seemed like knowledge isn't knowledge.
Could you give some illustrations of the sort of subjects which have been speculated about and then produce some material result later?
Yes, it's quite easy to do so, especially from Greek philosophy. The Greeks invented a whole lot of hypotheses which turned out valuable later, but which in their day couldn't be tested. Take, for example, the atomic hypothesis. Democritus invented the atomic hypothesis that matter consists of little atoms. And after about 2,000 years, and rather more than that, it turned out that this was the right scientific view. But in his day, it was merely a suggestion.
But didn't Plato think that Democritus's theory about atoms was a lot of nonsense?
Plato was horrified by him, said all his books ought to be burnt, because Plato didn't like science. He liked mathematics, but he didn't like anything else that was scientific.
But now, in this way, philosophy, in a sense, becomes a kind of servant of science.
Well, that's part of it. But, of course, it isn't only a servant of science, because there are a number of things that science can't deal with. All questions of values, for example. Science won't tell you what is good and what is bad. Tell you what is good or bad as an end, and not just as a means.
But what change has there been over the years in the attitude of philosophers and the public to philosophy, would you say?
Well, that depends upon the school of philosophy that you're thinking of. In Plato and in Aristotle, both of them, the main thing was an attempt to understand the world. And that, I should say personally, is what philosophy ought to be doing. But then you come on to the Stoics, and their emphasis was mainly on morality. That you ought to be stoical, you ought to endure misfortunes patiently. And that came to be the popular use of a philosopher.
Would you say that Marx was a philosopher?
Well, he was certainly in a sense a philosopher. But now there you have an important division among philosophers. There are some philosophers who exist to uphold the status quo, and others who exist to upset it, and Marx, of course, belongs to the second lot. For my part, I should reject both those as being not the true business of a philosopher. And I should say the business of a philosopher is not to change the world, but to understand it, which is the exact opposite of what Marx said.
What kind of a philosopher would you say you are?
Well, the only label I've of is logical atomist, but not very keen on the label. I've rather avoided labels.
What does that mean, a logical atomist?
It means, in my mind, that the way to get at the nature of any subject matter you're looking at is analysis, and that you can analyze until you get to things that can't be analyzed any further, and those would be logical atoms. I call them logical atoms because they're not little bits of matter. They're the, so to speak, ideas out of which a thing is built up.
Philosophie à la brésilienne, c'est magnifique. Ouh là là!